All Blacks against Springboks, round 2 of the Rugby Championship. Can't decide who's the winner because there's a draw between these two teams. Pretty crazy game. Very much a game of two halves, and interestingly, where the team that seemed to be doing well in whichever half wasn't really able to capitalize, it was the other team which would go on and score. So yeah, very interesting result for the Rugby Championship. It's a draw. That's 2 years in a row that the All Blacks have not been able to beat the Springboks in Wellington. This is kind of becoming a thing, but I guess, yeah, we'll see. So, how did the game go? It starts off with a South African penalty. Pollard kicks a penalty, early points, and that guy was looking pretty sharp, and you got the feeling that any time that the All Blacks, got on the wrong side of the ref, that they would be punished by that boot, and that was the case for much of the game. So it's 3-0 to the Springboks. Good news for New Zealand was they kind of stole the first South African line-out ball, and the South African line-out did look pretty shaky and was under a fair bit of pressure throughout the course of this game. I thought with Mostert coming back, it would be a lot more secure than it was, and I mean, it was fine for much of the game. I think the final percentage for the line-out was 77%, which is lower than you would want for the Springboks. It was certainly under a lot of pressure, and it was a bit of good news for the All Blacks early. But that being said, Sonny Bill got stripped in his first carry of the ball, so both sides were certainly putting a marker on the other side to say, we're not going to make your life easy, and they were both doing that to each other, and that was to carry out pretty much the whole game as well. On 6 minutes, the Springboks turned down a pretty tough shot at a penalty, which was a bit surprising. They went for a line-out, they secured the ball, and then a few phases later they got an advantage. Sonny Bill, again, he was offside, so that one was pretty much right in front of the sticks. They got the advantage, nothing happened, and then they took the penalty, so it was 6-0 early to the Springboks. Whole lot of pressure on the All Blacks and converting those points. When the All Blacks did get the ball, that Springbok line speed was definitely making life very uncomfortable for the All Blacks players. Richie Mo'unga was getting closed down pretty quickly. So that was clearly a tactic by the Boks, and it was working. All Blacks finally got a penalty chance, I think after about 10-12 minutes. And kind of like last year, it was Barrett that took the kick, and he missed it. Wasn't the hardest penalty, and he missed it. So, in the scheme of things, that was a pretty big miss. I guess the same can be said for Sanchez last week for the Pumas against the All Blacks. It can happen. It was unfortunate, but yeah, he missed that penalty. 25 minutes, the All Blacks are under all kinds of pressure again from the Springboks. The ref actually stops and gives Kieran Reid a warning to say, when we're down in U22, you guys are giving away too many penalties. That was an interesting point because the Springboks, with that, didn't decide to press. They went for the sticks, and they missed the penalty. So Pollard was also guilty of missing a penalty. Again, you'd look at the scheme of things and say, man, if you'd got that penalty, I mean, obviously the game could have gone down a different route, but it was interesting that they decided not to press for a try and ended up missing the points, which was unfortunate for them. All Blacks errors is a note that I wrote because there were loads of them in that first half and the second half, to be fair, but it wasn't limited to them. The Boks, I've written a note, didn't take advantage of some of their chances. Again, errors of their own. So both sides guilty of a bit of rust at times, and I guess that's partly the fact that both these sides were kind of rejigged. Like, not many of these guys played last week, so there's not that cohesion that we might expect. So for an early part of the campaign, I guess that's kind of to be expected. All Blacks have virtually nothing in that first half, but then 37 minutes, Goodhue gets a try. It all comes from a bit of turnover ball. Barrett gets the line break. It comes from a Sonny Bill pass. Again, it was after turnover ball. It was converted, and it was 7-6. I did think at the time that because Barrett's line break went right down the wing, about as close to the touchline as you can get, how come they didn't look at his foot on the line? If that was the South Africans getting a try, I'm sure the TV producers here in New Zealand would have looked very closely at it, or if the game had been in South Africa, they would have looked closely at it. Now, it may be that the TMO actually looked at it and gave the referee the all clear, but I didn't hear anything about it. It just looked very close that I would have thought that's something they checked, and I hope they checked it, but it was close either way. But still, it was a try. Half-time, they go in, All Blacks in the lead, 7 points to 6. Run meters were actually pretty even in that first half, 152 to 157, with the Springboks having a few more. But the Springboks had 57% possession, 59% territory, so they were just on top in that first half. Both sides, though, were defensively pretty solid. All Blacks 81% tackling, Springboks 88%, so close to 90. Second half, early on, Faf de Klerk, he goes off for an HIA and he does not come back on. And he's a guy who often plays kind of 70, 80 minutes for the Boks. He goes off with an HIA, so the youngster Herschel Yankees in the second test has to come on and take the reins. Different player from Faf, and that he's not as aggressive defensively, but he certainly had his moment later on in the game. Also, the All Blacks took off Frank Samudi pretty early in that second half as well. 48 minutes, Barrett kicks a penalty to makes it 10 points to 6, so it's starting to get comfortable. And then some mistakes that weren't there in the Springboks first half start to creep in. Like, there were errors in the first half, but it seems to be getting more for the Springboks, and the All Blacks seem to be getting some momentum. Like, Pollard does like a cross kick, and it's just too big, it goes into touch. All Blacks really start to get momentum. They win a scrum penalty, and then in 55 minutes, Barrett takes a shot and he shanks it. So it's a second miss for Barrett. 58 minutes, that new Springbok front row comes on. Or at least the two props anyway. It was Inyakani and Mtawira, and they won a scrum penalty. So those guys, I think, were pretty instrumental, actually. They came on and really made a difference in that Springboks front row. 60 minutes, Retallick goes off with his arm looking pretty sore. Apparently he has dislocated his shoulder. So there's no news as yet, as I checked this morning, on how long he's going to be out, but apparently it depends. It can really vary on the amount of damage that's been done. So it could be like 16 weeks, it could be less. We will wait and see. That's pretty bad news, but again, nothing's confirmed other than that he dislocated his shoulder. Pretty nasty. 61 minutes, Pollard kicks a long distance, good penalty to bring it within a point, 10 points to 9. And there's still errors in the second half, and it's big name players doing it as well. Reed knocks the ball on, LaRue kicks the ball out on the full, so it's just pressure defensively from both sides. Like, you look at this game, and in terms of attack, neither side is going to put this down as a classic, but I think defensively both sides showed some pretty good stuff to force the other side into making errors. 68 minutes, Mo'unga kicks a penalty, 13-9. The All Blacks are putting on some pressure, but then Francois Lowe gets a turnover, a pretty key turnover. And then from that penalty, Mbanambi's throw is just a shocker. So it's messy again. 72 minutes, there's some handbags. You can really start to feel the game getting tense. Of course, Achia Snyman is involved with that. Dane Coles is involved with that. So those guys aren't afraid of a little bit of handbags. I thought the ref did miss a few things, like there was a knock-on that the All Blacks had. I thought Vermeulen's, one of his penalties, was a bit harsh. I think one of the All Blacks guys got taken out without the ball, so it was, if you had to say, it's probably he's leaning towards the All Blacks a bit. South African fans will probably say a lot, but I don't want to talk too much about the ref. 74 minutes, Mo'unga kicks a penalty. I think that was the one that was maybe from a dodgy call. And at the time, I was thinking, oh, well, 3 points is not going to make a difference in the overall game. Famous last words those were. 77 minutes, the Boks get a scrum penalty. So I'm talking about that new front row coming on. Bridge did well to kind of keep the ball in play. But then it didn't make a difference because a couple of minutes later, Yankees. The guy who got 2 tries on his debut, first game against the All Blacks, gets a try. They have to TMO it. They give it. The ref gave it an on-field try, so it came from quick ball, Pollard, LaRue. Colby went down the wing. He chipped over. Yankees was the guy chasing it. He contested it with Smith. The ball did bounce off Yankees, but he regathered it, and it was all good for a try. Yeah, man. So that guy's having a heck of a couple of games. He's pretty much booked his seat to Japan, surely, based on those performances. So that brings it within 2 points. Pollard has got a relatively easy kick, but in the circumstances, huge pressure. The kind of kick that you could stuff up if you let your mind wander. But he is ice cold. He kicks the conversion, no problems, and it is 16 points apiece. Game over. That kick is the last play of the game. So 16 all. A draw between the Springboks and the All Blacks. Crazy stuff. It was interesting because first half is pretty much all Springboks. All Blacks hit them at the end of the half on the bounce and sneak 7 points kind of thing. Second half is mostly the All Blacks. A couple minutes from the end or a minute from the end, the Springboks just quick ball down the wing, try time. So what can I say, man? Like the handling and stuff in this game is not going to make it a classic. The defense was very good, and the stats kind of show that as well. But I mean, the result was just great for rugby. I guess a fair bit of tension, and it just shows you how far the Springboks have come in the last couple of years, or at least under Rassie. So, end of the day, All Blacks run meters 395 to 245, so they did pull out in that second half, but they weren't able to keep the scoreboard ticking over with tries anyway. Possession finishes 57% to the All Blacks, 59% territory to the All Blacks, so that second half was like 67% possession and 71% territory to the All Blacks. Remember, the first half stats were for the Boks, it fully reversed. Both sides tackled very well. That's what I'm talking about, the defense. All Blacks at 89%, made 81 tackles. The Springboks 86%, 133 tackles. So a proper test match defense, which is cool. Penalties conceded, 11 penalties to the Springboks, 8 to the All Blacks. This is what I mean. Like, some of the 50-50s probably went the All Blacks' way. I guess you kind of expect that at home. Refs get influenced, they are human. Line out percentage, 83 to the All Blacks, 77 to the Springboks. So neither side will be that happy with that. The Springboks especially would like to bring that up a notch. Kicking percentage, 80% to the Boks, just that one penalty to Pollard missed. 67 to the All Blacks. So they will look again at another match where the kicks have cost them. In terms of individuals, how did we think that Bowden and Mo'unga thing went? It was kind of hard to say given how many errors there were with ball in hand for this game. I mean, Bowden certainly had the better of the two stats. I mean, not as kicking, but 78 run meters, 5 defenders beaten and 2 clean breaks is some of the best offensive stats of this game. Pollard also impressed, 67 run meters, a clean break and 2 defenders beaten. Colby was massive, 4 defenders beaten for him. Defensively, Matt Todd had 14 out of 14 tackles, so he's kind of doing what he does best. Peter Steph-Tutoy had 16 out of 18, and Quokka Smith, who was a guy to watch to see how he goes in a proper test, 17 out of 18 tackles, top tackler of the game. So has he done enough to convince people that he is test quality? I guess we will see. Sonny Bill needs more game time, doesn't he? That wasn't his best outing, but I mean, he was involved in that All Blacks try, and he still needs more game time to kind of get up to speed. Lakanyo I was probably expecting a bit more from him. Him and Esterhuizen I both had high hopes for the Springboks this season, and neither had their best shift. Ended up getting substituted in this one for Creel, and Creel made a bunch of tackles when he came on, so yeah. Springboks remain top of the Rugby Championship. They are a point ahead of the All Blacks based on that bonus point from last week, so it's all going to come down to that last week of play. I think the All Blacks will need a favour from the Pumas, so I guess we'll see what happens. But that game against the Wallabies for the Pumas didn't go all that well. You guys let me know your thoughts on this game. As I said, only one try each side, a lot of errors from both sides, so there was a fair bit to work on, both defensively pretty solid. You'd have to think that the Springboks will be the happier of the two sides. The fact that they got a draw away from home and the fact that they came back to do it, like in that second half when they were really under the pump, they will be disappointed that they didn't put more points on in that first half. Because can you imagine if the Springboks had put on, I don't know, 14 points in that first half and not conceded that try, then the All Blacks would have been chasing the game. So both sides will be a bit disappointed. But of course, it's nice when you're behind right at the death to come back and secure that draw. So I'm sure a lot of fans will take that as well. You guys let me know your thoughts on the game. It certainly was an interesting one. And yeah, I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.